So do you want me to start?
No, no.
Are you
Okay,
going,
oh wait,
you're going to ask?
can you first state your name and spell it as well?
I'm Masha Kaplan, née Weingarten. I was born in the old city of Jerusalem 88 years ago. And I lived there until the old city fell in 1948 during the War of Liberation. Then I volunteered to go out with the wounded prisoners of war to Jordan. And when I came back from Jordan, we lived in the new city of Jerusalem. In 1956, I married my husband, Professor Isaac Kaplan, and we lived for 2 years in Enkarim, which is a lovely village just outside Jerusalem. And then my husband was offered to open up the biggest plastic surgery unit and burns unit in the country at the Beilinson Hospital in Petah Tikva, which is near Tel Aviv. I felt very bad about leaving Jerusalem because I considered myself a daughter of Jerusalem, but I had no alternative. So we came and we lived next to the hospital. And in 1967, we came here to Savillon.
Why didn't you go back in 1967?
Sorry?
Why didn't you go back in 1967?
Because my husband was working at the Beilinson Hospital, which is near Tel Aviv, and I couldn't go back on my. I didn't want to go back on my own. I had to be with my husband and my daughter. I have one daughter with 5 grandchildren, and there was no point in going back to Jerusalem when he had the biggest department, both for plastic surgery and the only burns unit in the country. So there was no point in my going back to Jerusalem, although I would have loved to do it, but I couldn't do it.
Hold on. So, Jeremy, can you scoot back here a little bit more? Next, a little more this way.
Good?
Yeah, can you, Masha, can you just look at her for a second? Yeah, that's better. Perfect. Thanks.
Okay. So how old were you in 1948?
22.
You were 22 when you
When,
had to leave
when
Jerusalem?
when the State of Israel was pronounced at the United Nations, everybody in Israel was dancing in the streets, but we in the old city, they closed immediately all the gates. You know, we have 8 gates of Jerusalem, and we were besieged for 6 months. We couldn't go into the new city, and people from the new city couldn't come to us. What happened was that most of the men were caught in the new city, and in the old city were left a few men, a lot of women, and children and old people. That was the time that we lived during the siege, from the pronunciation of the State of Israel on the 29th of November till the fall of the old city in May 28th.
Do you have any memories that stick out to you from that time?
Do I have what?
Any memories, any distinct memories of that?
Of course, first of all, I was a nurse by profession, and when I graduated from nursing school, my father was the chairman of the old city of Jerusalem, and he set up a clinic for treatment that all the people in the old city, whether they were Jewish or Christians or Arabs or Armenians, got free medical treatment. So he asked me that I should work there as a volunteer. So I worked there all the time. And when the siege started, of course, we were caught inside. And I worked there all the time. And during the war, I looked mainly after we had a lot of inhabitants killed and wounded. So I looked after the wounded ones. And when the old city fell on the 28th of May, the commander of the Arab Legion, Abdallah al-Tel, when he came in and he saw that there were only a few young boys, that when he came in with the tanks and so forth, he said, had he known that these were the people that held the old city during the war, he would have come with sticks instead of tanks and cannons. And then he decided, as there were only a couple of young boys, he decided to take older people and to take as many as he could, and even the wounded ones, and there were lots of wounded ones. And the wounded ones started crying and telling me, Masha, they will kill us and kill us. And I told them they won't do anything to you because they knew the rules of the British. The British used to teach the Arab Legion how to behave, and they never killed any prisoner of war. So they said they don't trust them. They're on the way to Jordan, they'll probably be killed. So I said, hang on a minute, and I went up to Abdallah al-Tel, who was the commander of the Arab Legion, and I told him, look, I've been looking after these wounded people during the war. I wanted to look after them in Jordan as well, and I volunteered to go as a prisoner of war. And I was with them for a couple of weeks when they healed, and they went into the main camp. We were in Amman, and the main camp was in Mafraq, and they joined other prisoners of war from other places. So I came home, and I worked in Hadassah Hospital, and I was afterwards immediately became head nurse of the children's department and the premature unit. And in 1949, this was in 48. In 49, I was sent to Aden when they transported 50,000 Yemenite Jews to Israel. And I was in charge there of the hospital. We set up a hospital in the desert. There was nothing there, just a desert with 50,000 Yemenite Jews that were waiting to be transferred to Israel. So I was there for a whole year. And then I came back and I became head nurse of the children's department in Hadassah, Jerusalem. And in 54, I was sent to England to study about prem units. So we opened up a premature unit in Israel. And then in 56, I got married. And I gave birth to in 57, I gave birth to my only daughter. And then in 58, we moved to Beilinson, next to Tel Aviv, and I gave up my profession as a nurse, and because I wanted to look after my daughter. And at that time, a nursing help earned more than I would have earned. So I stayed at home, and then I only came back to nursing during the war to work in the burns department of my husband, because during the war there were so many burnt people in the old city, and we had nothing to treat them with, and most of them died. And to get over this trauma, I decided that I will volunteer in war times in my husband's burns unit, and that's what I did. And then my husband was the father of laser surgery. Before that, he was a very, very famous plastic surgeon. He was invited all over the world, so I used to travel with him all the time. And then in 1972, he developed the first laser for surgery. He became the father of laser surgery, and he was invited all over the world, and we traveled an awful lot, so I used to travel with him all the time. And that's what we did, as a matter of fact, until he died a few months ago.
Do you visit Jerusalem often?
I used to visit Jerusalem very, very often, but 6 years ago I came down, I developed a serious cancer, and from the chemotherapy I had all sorts of complications and so forth, so it wasn't so easy for me. But when my parents died, of course I used to go up every week, at least, and sometimes twice a week. And when they passed away, and my condition deteriorated, so I tried to go as much as I could. And of course all the holidays were spent at home in our house in the old city, and I would visit them as much as I could. We're a very, very, very unusual united family. Our children are like brothers and sisters, and our grandchildren are very. We were five sisters. Two of them died already, so we're left three. But our children and grandchildren are all very, very close to each other, and we meet during the holidays and first of all, when there's the yahrzeit, when we go up to the cemeteries of my parents and my sisters, and of course on holidays. They're very close to each other.
When you did visit Jerusalem, did it still feel like home to you, or how did it feel to you?
Sorry?
When you did visit Jerusalem again, did it still feel like home to you, or how did it feel?
To tell you the truth, I would go, although Savion is considered the best, the most, the nicest area in Israel. Today I would go back home to the old city in Jerusalem. But I couldn't do it because my husband's job was here. But I try to go up as much as I can. Of course, when my parents were alive, I used to go up very, very often. And then also, I went quite often to visit my sisters. I've got another sister in Jerusalem, apart from my nephew that you interviewed. So apart from visiting them, I have another younger sister. She's younger than me by 12 years, that I used to visit her quite often. But since I got the cancer with all the treatments and the complications, I try as much as I can. But we're very, very close to each other.
What was it like the first time you went back to the old city? When was it, and what was it like for you?
In the old city, in the old times.
Yeah, like when the first, was it, did you go back in 67 just to visit? What was it?
In 67, the thing was this, that when in 67, the governor of Jerusalem phoned me up and my nephew's brother, Rivka, and asked us if we could come into the old city when the parachutists were still fighting, because they wanted to take out the Arabs from where the buildings that there were synagogues. And no, I knew the old city better than anybody else, and I'm not bragging, but I was working there for a few years as a volunteer nurse, and I knew every single person in the old city, because they used to come to the clinic for treatment, and I used to visit them to go on home visits and so forth. So we went into 67, my nephews, my sister Rivka and myself, and we went, and